Look, sorry to be visiting Wagga Wagga in these circumstances. Pleased that overnight a natural disaster declaration has been made. That unlocks federal and state funding to assist families, small business operators and farmers with the immediate costs that are associated with these floods. Can I thank in particular the efforts of the SES and the Defence Force, which have been magnificent. I've just come from Ashmont, where I've seen an incredible response from the community in filling sandbags. But I have to say that from the air, in particular North Wagga Wagga, is a pretty sad and sorry picture with homes inundated. What we're facing here in Wagga Wagga, what we're facing in other parts of the Murrumbidgee are problems that aren't going to go away immediately. They're problems that the Mayor and the federal and state members are going to have to deal with for some time. And the important thing from a state government perspective is that we're here trying to support. So can I introduce the State SES Commissioner Murray Keir and then the local regional controller James McTavish. So Murray.
Thank you, Premier. Well, here standing under sunny skies in Wagga, which is a good thing, with no rainfall predicted throughout the day, possible light showers through the rest of the week, but standing in front of floodwater as a result of the Murrumbidgee continuing to rise over the last 48 hours. It is still predicted to peak at 10.9 metres somewhere this afternoon, possibly between 12 and 3 p.m. this afternoon, which will be 0.1 of a metre below the top of the Wagga levee. But that's not the important measure. The important measure is 10.7 metres. Anything between 10.7 metres and the top of the levee is not built to hold back the water, only up to 10.7. That's the normal design feature of a levee. So as the predicted height is going to go through that design height of the levee is why we've moved to evacuate up to 8,000 people overnight. I must say, as Commissioner, I'm extremely proud of the work that's been done in Wagga overnight, a combination of all emergency services, local government, in fact most agencies of government working here in Wagga over the last 24 hours to ensure the safety of people. In the surrounding districts there's still a number of towns that are affected by floodwater. Urana has begun to evacuate the population there due to the rising floodwaters. Forbes, as we speak, a number of homes, up to 265 homes, being evacuated there. So just an amazing process by a combined effort of both the local residents and emergency services here today to ensure the safety of those people. Now, for finer details on exactly what's been happening over the 24 hours, I'll now pass to the Regional Controller, James McTavish, who is also the Incident Controller for the entire region.
We've had a very busy 4 days in particular around the southwest slopes and the Riverina. Well in excess of 250 homes have been inundated. Many thousands of people have been forced to evacuate. And many communities have been badly affected. Around Wagga, the situation is going as well as could be expected and as well as could be planned. I just urge people that are subject to an evacuation order to comply with it, to make sure that they consider their safety and the safety of people around them, and make sure that they obey the directions of emergency services and police in particular. I just note, however, that this is potentially a very lengthy operation. While the situation upstream from Wagga in many areas is starting to ease, we've got a very significant flood emergency occurring in the Murrumbidgee irrigation area. We have a very significant flood emergency occurring in Wagga and surrounds, and in coming weeks we've got a similarly very significant flood emergency in towns downstream on the Murrumbidgee. This comes on top of significant localised flash flooding which has inundated many homes, has inundated much farmland, has killed many livestock, and we're expecting that the recovery process from this is going to be lengthy and very difficult. I just encourage people that are, I suppose, looking to be affected in coming weeks to take the advice of emergency services seriously. Where we issue an evacuation order, you should comply with it and comply with it rapidly. And if you get into trouble, you should ring early. We don't want to be saving people from flood water. We would rather they move and move rapidly when they're directed to do so. If they do have some concerns, they should ring the SES. or in the case of a life-threatening emergency, we do have additional rescue resources in place, but I just ask that they don't get themselves into those positions in the first place. At this stage, we're, I suppose, comfortable with the level of evacuation in Wagga. We would be more comfortable if we had everybody out, but the community spirit that has been displayed has been remarkable. I just encourage people to be patient, to work alongside the other emergency services, to work alongside other people in the community, and be prepared for a very long, lengthy and quite difficult process as this flood emergency proceeds.
Yesterday you were asked at 4:30 if CBD was going to be evacuated or if there was a chance of an evacuation, and the answer was no. What changed in 4 hours?
Okay, we had a significant deterioration in conditions along the river. We've been watching gauges upstream from Wagga for some time, and late yesterday afternoon we became concerned that there'd been a rapid rise just upstream from Wagga. There's one gauge that's about 12 hours up. We discussed our concerns with the Bureau of Meteorology, and they issued a revised warning late last night for 10.8 metres. That was then subsequently revised again to 10.9 metres. We got, I suppose, a very short warning that we would be required to make a decision with regards to the evacuation of the central business district in central Wagga. But the decision, to be frank, was quite straightforward. The design height is 10.7 metres. It is too risky to go over 10.7 metres, and as a result we issued the evacuation order at that stage.
How hard is it to predict that 10.9 metres?
The Bureau has, or the Bureau of Meteorology has professional hydrologists that do this. I suppose the difference between this and the December 2010 flood was the rate of rise. In massive floods in this area, the travel time between Gundagai and Wagga is considerably less than typical. And here we saw, in a very similar fashion to the 1974 flood, that the river between Gundagai and Wagga rose very rapidly. I'm very pleased with the efforts of people in Wagga in evacuating their community overnight. It is a very significant flood emergency. We do have grave concerns for people's safety right across the region, but I'm very pleased with the degree of compliance and I suppose the degree that they've made common sense decisions over the last 24 hours in particular.
So James, are taking it seriously?
On the whole, people are taking it seriously, and I think that they only need to consider what happened in North Wagga when we issued the evacuation order. Most people went, and they went rapidly. North Wagga is now entirely inundated and every home is affected. I just encourage people to take this warning very seriously. There are warnings also and orders also in place right across the riverina. I just encourage people to take them seriously, to consider their safety, to consider the safety of their families and their children, and move when they're directed to do so.
James McTavish, are there any particular areas of the main Wagga City levee bank that you're keeping a particular eye on?
We've got concerns, along with council, we've got concerns about flooding in a number of areas. Wagga City Council's done a very good job in maintaining the levee over this flood emergency. They've got a lot of people and a lot of resources dedicated to making sure that the levee is maintained in good order. Our concern, obviously, is a catastrophic breach, and that's why we've issued the evacuation order. At this stage, there is no indication anywhere along the levee that there is going to be a breach. That said, the flood is not due to peak until later this afternoon.
Premier, how does this compare to some of the things you've seen around the state?
Well, a month ago I was up in Moree. Ironically, James McTavish was up there as the incident controller as well. The fact is that what I'm seeing in both places, what we're seeing in too many places across the state, are homes that are being flooded. That's devastation for those families concerned. Can I repeat again what James has said? If people are asked to evacuate, please evacuate. More importantly, can I tell people that are motorists not to drive through running water? That's the most dangerous thing you can do. In relation to how serious this flood is, I'm told that previously the water, this area behind me was flooded in 2010, but the water was not flowing. Look at the water behind me, it's flowing strongly. That's a sign as to how much more serious this flood is.
Premier, what will the cost be of this? We've spoken to farmers, obviously some think that they'll be off the land after this.
Well, look, this is devastating for small business operators, it's devastating for farmers and also for those whose houses are flooded. it's frankly too early to be able to assess all of those costs. You can't do that practically till water's received, but Cabinet had an estimate yesterday that for the rest of the state that's been flood affected over the past few weeks, the roads bill for local and state government could be as high as $500 million, $500 million. That's $500 million that neither state nor local governments have budgeted for. Can I just also report that at 11 o'clock today, the State SES Commissioner will join the State Disaster Council, a meeting of the State Disaster Council being convened by the Minister for Police and Emergency Services. That's the first time that the Disaster Council has met in New South Wales. It's a sign of our concern about what's happening in particular in southern and western New South Wales. That council will look at what, if any, additional powers are needed to ensure that SES and other emergency services are able to do the job that we look to them to do at these times.
What do you say to the rough estimates of how this is going to impact your budget though?
Well, the only rough estimate we had yesterday was one that talked about a $500 million roads bill facing local and state government. But I say that was before this peak came through here and before the flood crisis in the Murrumbidgee has been assessed.
Mr Premier, what do you expect support from the federal government?
Well, absolutely. One of the reasons I'm down here today is not just to see for myself what's happening, not just to talk to the Mayor and others about what we can do in order to assist, but also to see what devastations occurred to those family homes. And so I've met people, I've talked to community members who are filling sandbags, I've seen others who have been affected. The Mayor's just told me about a family of 6 that were moved from North Wagga into a motel, had to be evacuated last night somewhere else. There are families putting up with an enormous amount, but you know what? They're doing it well, and even more extraordinarily, when sandbags are required to be filled, a community just emerges from the darkness to do so. So it's just fantastic community spirit, along with the SES, along with the Defence Forces. And I spoke to the Prime Minister yesterday about more cooperation from the Defence Forces. She offered that a month ago, and I'm delighted to be down here seeing it firsthand.
Premier, what are your thoughts on Clover Moore's plan that was on the front page of today's?
I think I'll worry about that when I get back to Sydney.